Alrighty, welcome everybody to I think we're on episode 7 of,
Ah, 7. All
is
right.
it? I don't know. I would have to double
That's
check
good.
that. To episode 7, 6, maybe 7 of the Live O2 for the People show. We are excited today to be joined by one of our buddies and Live O2 user and comrade, Ben Menafee. He has an awesome story to share with you guys this morning, so I'm very excited to get started. First, as usual, I'm joined by our VP, Tom Butler. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Jenna. Good morning.
Glad you're with us this morning, and we're joined, as I said, by Ben Menafee. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Jenna. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. So first, Ben, I would just love for our listeners, maybe some of them have watched the videos that we put up on our Warriors Unwounded series. So thank you for being a part of that. But I understand that you spent some time in the Air Force. Can you tell us a little bit about your role?
Oh, sure. Well, I was in the Air Force for 20 years as an intel analyst, and I retired in 2007. And after I retired, I went to Afghanistan. I continued my role, serving my country, and as a civilian. And while in Afghanistan, I had a freak accident. Had a severe TBI, so that's where my story started.
Can you expand a little bit more on the freak accident, or is that top secret info?
No. I like I did every day over there to keep busy. I went to the gym after I got off a shift, and a cable broke while I was doing cable rows. It threw me to the ground where I smashed the right side of my head. And a couple of months later, I woke up from my coma.
Oh, wow.
I was at Walter Reed. And at that point, it's when the doctors told my family that I may never walk or speak again.
So it was pretty serious. How old were you at this time, Ben?
45.
45.
Just recently turned 50. Yep.
Oh, all right. Happy birthday.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I can tell in your voice, and this sometimes happens as we're going back and revisiting things. From what I'm picking up, you basically were in communications operations for Afghanistan, not just working there, but in a leadership role, and then overnight
Correct.
Changed.
Yep, that is correct, Tom. I'd have never guessed in a million years this would ever happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And but things in life happen. We just have to overcome it. And I remember when I came out of my coma and the doctor said that to my family, I was thinking, you've got to be crazy, because I was walking 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the gym, and I tried to roll out of bed, and of course the nurses had to strap me down because I just wouldn't accept the fact that what they said was correct.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit, Ben, about, after they told you that you weren't going to be walking for, some amount of time, what was your self-talk? Like, what was going through your mind at that point?
There's no way, like I said, when you come out of a coma, you really don't know what's going on. I was dazed and confused. And they were, I guess my family told me I was just babbling on about nonsense. And they were trying to medicate me and whatnot. And, I just wouldn't accept what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the point, your buddy David, Ben is a good friend of David Chambly, who's one of the executive trainers. I think that's how we ended up meeting and originally talking. But you are an overachiever, and there's something very interesting that happens with being an overachiever. I think prior to getting there, there's an ownership role, and it's something I think we can uncover in this conversation of, this is your health, and how dare somebody tell you that you can't do something. Am I resonating at all with your experience?
Yes, Tom, but I consider myself an average Joe. I
Well,
never
maybe you're
consider
just
myself
being
an
humble
overachiever.
That's usually the case.
Stubborn's the word you're probably looking for. I've been accused of being stubborn on multiple occasions, so not accepting something and wanting to, yeah.
Well, and Tom, maybe to back up a little bit, can you just describe, so Ben mentioned that he suffered from a TBI, and I know a lot of our audience is already familiar with what that is and what that means, but can you just give us a quick snapshot of what that injury usually entails?
Well, we're learning a lot about this from the whole medical perspective. The scale of TBIs is growing hugely, from things that were considered very minor. We now know those things actually do affect us. And in Ben's case, this was, I'm guessing you were picking up a loaded weight stack. So there was a lot of momentum and the cable broke. So this one was where a lot of load or a lot of force was involved. And this was an acute TBI where I'm guessing you lost consciousness and there was enough injury or swelling that the body went into a protective mode, which is a coma. And, this is where the body, it loses function due to the injury. There's some inflammation. Basically, the soft tissue of the brain is hitting the skull, and that's usually the injury that we have to overcome. And it depends on what part of the brain is damaged and how much that's networked into our function. And it sounds like you had enough force and the right place got injured that you went into a coma. And then in all of that too, you're dealing with there probably was some form of anesthesia or painkillers there that also can kind of magnify the experience in terms of where it's been and returning to your function. So there's a large scale of TBIs out there that we're still learning about, but this one sounds to be acute and abrupt and a big event, but not an impossible event.
Ben, can you share a little bit about, if you're comfortable talking about your experience with your pain medication? Was that something that became a problem, or to you seems like a problem, or what was your experience with meds?
Not, it never became a problem with me because I refused to take it.
Oh, okay.
There was a lot at the time. There was a lot of stories going around, and I knew other military members that were addicted to painkillers and having issues. So I was conscious enough to know I didn't want to be one of those people. So I just sucked up the pain and pressed on.
Wow.
And that's an incredibly tough thing to do, but there's a perspective out there that pain in your body is your body actually asking you to change something and to repair something or improve something. So actually kind of acknowledging that pain and taking it as, oh, this is something I have to transform. I mean, it's probably, I can't recommend that blindly, but when you hear about people doing that, they usually have a much better outcome. And it sounds like that's your process.
Were your pain levels pretty high at this time, Ben?
I wouldn't say that. It's hard to say what my pain level was at that time because I'm still really not, cognitive functioning properly at the time. So
yeah. Also, sometimes it's hard to judge your pain when you're in the moment. I think so. Hindsight's 20/20. Well, then I guess, Ben, during the whole process that you were maybe in the hospital and all of that, you mentioned that you were stubborn, and maybe that was a good problem to have, but what was your motivation for wanting to push through and to get through your injury and to, obviously make a very difficult decision to forego meds, even though I do understand that you saw a lot of addiction. So maybe that was a red flag for you. But kind of walk us through your process and how you knew that you could get through it. What were your motivations?
Family. Now, as far as knowing, I had no idea, if I could do anything, but I was willing to try.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was a military instructor for 6 years, and when the students would ask me a question, I would always tell them, we can sit here and talk about it, or we can try it and see what happens. And so you can't preach one thing and do another. So, I was also a wrestling coach. I coached my sons in high school, and I would always tell all my wrestlers, there's no magic switch on our back, so we can just press the button and all of a sudden become a great athlete. We have to work at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just couldn't be that hypocrite.
The guilt got you through it.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, talk to me then about your treatment process. Obviously, we have you on the podcast because we know that LiveO2 is
Right.
part of your current treatment, but walk us through just from the very, very beginning, maybe even when LiveO2 wasn't in there. Can you just tell us about your journey?
Right. Absolutely. Let's see, when I finally arrived back in Florida, I was going through inpatient, your typical physical and occupational therapy. It is what it is when you go through therapy. You wake up, you have a routine every morning. It's written on a board. And of course, for me, I wasn't making gains fast enough. And I would ask questions. I had my iPad with me, and I'd Google stuff and about brain injuries and ask the doctors. And all I would hear is, oh, that's snake oil. Well, specifically about oxygen. And at the time, I also got hyperbaric oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And countries like Israel, they were leading the world in treating people with it. And I read a few anecdotal stories of folks that had stroke or TBI, and they were up and about again.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really, at the top of my list of things to do, was to find a way to get some oxygen therapy. And fortunately for me, just down the road from where I was doing my inpatient, there was a retired military doctor who had a facility, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go. And I remember taking the first breath of oxygen and how much better I felt. My head was more clear. Fast forward, I'm back home. I'm out of inpatient. I'm sitting at the house thinking to myself, I need a better, more economical way of getting this oxygen therapy. And that's when Dave Chamley called me out of the blue and asked if I'd ever heard of LiveO2.
Yeah, Dave is a saint. He has that uncanny ability just to call the right person and say, hey, this is what I've been working on.
Right. And so I started doing research on it, and I liked what I was reading, and it fell right into place with the hyperbaric. So, I ordered a system and hopped on it, and it took me a while to get used to it, to get a protocol that I felt like I was making gains from.
Mm-hmm.
Once I did, I felt a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Aches and pains went away, instantly.
Now,
so I felt great about that.
Now, Ben, where were you physically when you started the training? Can you describe where your function was?
Okay, my left side is paralyzed. I can walk. At the time, I still have a wheelchair and used it a good bit, and I could hobble around short distance with a cane. And I had zero function in my ankle, no dorsiflexion, which is the ability to lift the foot up and outward.
Mm.
Yeah. But over time, I started to regain that. And fast forward to today, I no longer use an AFO or any type of leg brace, ankle device. I walk without a cane. I still keep a wheelchair. I'll look at it every once in a while just to remind me.
Motivational wheelchair, right?
There you go.
That's great.
As a matter of fact, I load it out to others that need it.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I say, hey, let's come on here and get some of this oxygen. And I've helped other people with my machine, so good stuff.
I've actually been in a few workshops where the practitioners will be very blunt, and they will, point to a wheelchair and say, this is an option, or getting into action is another option.
Mm-hmm.
You get to choose. Most people don't want to associate being dependent on a wheelchair. Sometimes it's part of a necessity, but even then there's still a scale of being dependent on a wheelchair, a little bit or a lot, or what you can do out of a wheelchair. But it's very interesting to, I can see where you made that decision to move on.
And Ben, if I could ask you to be maybe a little bit more specific. I know that you've been very gracious in the private Facebook group and sharing like actual details of your protocol. So thanks for doing that. I think a lot of members have benefited just reading exactly what you do with your system.
Right.
Mentioning the wheelchair and using that as motivation. Can you also be a little bit more, just for the listeners who don't know about your mobility issues, how does it work with you actually training on a system if one side of your body is still currently immobile?
I'm not totally paralyzed on my left side. It's I still have a little movement in there. I have no functional movement. And when I first started, I have a recumbent stationary bike that I use as part of my training, and I could sit down myself, but I'd have to have someone strap my leg and my hand onto the bike so I could sit up and stay on it. And over time, I would say 2 months of getting serious about using it, now I'm able to just, sit down myself and put my leg into the stirrup pedal for as long as I want to without any assistance. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I am now.
And sorry, I don't actually know what a recumbent bike is. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Can you explain at least to me what that is?
Absolutely. Well, you have your standard stationary bike, which sits upright like a regular bicycle. You have the seat and your pedals are below you. And a recumbent bicycle is more like sitting in a dining room chair or your office chair, and the pedals are forward.
Okay. Yeah, I've got okay. I know what you're talking about now. I can visually see that.
And this is a great point too. One of the most common questions we get in Live O2 land is, will this work with blank? And it basically is a fill in the blank. We can go all the way from someone using a warm water foot bath, if that's where they're starting and it gets the heart rate up a little bit, we can completely go there. There's a whole line of adaptive equipment, pedal ergonometers where you can just use your hands. There's also equipment where you're using your hands to actually move your feet. And like Ben's talking about, the feet are attached to the pedals and you're actually moving those limbs, even though you might not be completely functional with them. And then it goes all the way up to when we start working with pro athletes. We have this equipment that you're basically doing a rock scramble on a 45-degree incline, a complete, really tough workout. Anywhere in there, rebounders, saunas, they all work really great. And so you just have to start at the place that makes the most sense for you, and then don't stay there too long. Know that you're going to have to change it. You're going to have to ask the body to do something new, just like you've done, Ben, basically.
Yeah. And Ben, I think when you were sharing your protocol in the group, if I remember correctly, you said that you've increased the time that you do your hypoxic sprints now, right? Or did I read that incorrectly?
Absolutely. No, you're correct.
Mm-hmm.
And as Tom mentioned, you always have to keep the body guessing.
Mm-hmm.
So as you asked me if I'd listened to the other podcasts, not to jump off topic, but
That's
I
okay.
was listening to Julia Hubble's podcast,
Mm-hmm.
excellent podcast, and I suggest that to anyone. And I think she was correct. The body wants to do something. You just have to help it get there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have to keep pushing ourselves. She was 100% correct in saying that. It's easy for us, especially when you're injured, to sit in the chair and, oh, woe is me. I'm more comfortable here than I am doing something. You know, and to get up, it's habit forming, if you will, you know, just like anything else. Sit there and do nothing is habit forming. But if you get your body motivated and, you know, even if it's walking 10 feet a day, trying to get to 12, 13, so yeah, your body will respond to it, because I know for a fact that's what happened with me. I started with 1 step, went to 10 steps, you know, and so on and so on. And now I can walk, you know, a couple of miles without getting tired. Yeah, I really don't know how far I can go with right now, because I haven't pushed myself that far yet.
Ben, I wanted to ask, from where you started with LiveO2, 2-part question here. How long did it take you to realize you were getting results? And then how long have you been training with LiveO2 and the whole process up to date?
All right. All right. Well, to answer your first question, Tom, that in itself is a 2-part question. Yeah. So when I got the system, I was reading the protocols, and I'd get on there, and it was more of me just going through the motions. And it's like anything else. You can't train to be a good athlete if you're just barely going through the motions. You have to push yourself. You know, so I thought about what, you know, if I had a coach standing beside me, what would he be doing? Well, you know, Ben, you're not doing a thing right now except rolling around on the ground. You need to get up and do something. So, and that's what, you know, when I first started, I was 100% sure if I was doing the protocols right because of that. And I just kept talking to Dave, and I called into a couple of people there at LiveO2, and they encouraged me to try those things. And over time, we'll fast forward say 3 or 4 months of using my recumbent bike as a coat rack. You know, I cleaned it off and hopped on there and started pushing myself. And then I started noticing that I could breathe better, and I was walking further. And when I had pains in my back, I would jump on there, and after a 15-minute session, all the pain was gone. So then I started thinking, maybe there's something to this. So I started playing with the protocols, detoxing longer, doing my sprints longer, you know, and not desaturating, I'm sorry, the bloodstream, and, you know, stay on negative for longer periods of time, and then finish with longer periods of oxygen at the end. And that was helping me make gains that we'll call tangible gains, things I could see personally. So little movements in my paralyzed arm, my paralyzed leg. I started regaining my ankle strength. And so that's question number 1. That's a long answer, huh? But anyways, on 2, I've been training for about good, if we take off the bad months, a year and a half or so. And I'm still making gains. Every physiatrist, neuro-ophthalmologist, neurologist, well, not every neurologist, but the majority of them have all stated, you know, 12 months is once you reach your 12-month mark, that's the maximum of all your gains. You know, the old axiom is you'll never make any gains after 12 months when you have a brain injury. And my exercise physiologist I work with documented that I had more gains in year 2 and 3 than I ever did in year 1.
Wow.
And I'm 5 years post, and I'm still making gains.
That's amazing, Ben.
Yeah. And the only thing I'm doing different than everyone else is I have an oxygen system here at the house that I use at least 2 to 3 times a day now.
That's a lot of oxygen.
So,
Ben, I want to ask, what does your wife have to say about all this?
well, I'm still trying to get her on it. She has a phobia with her face being covered, with a mask. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, as far as me, I think she just rolls with the punches.
Uh-huh.
And because in the early days, let's back up this real quick. In the early days, I was very defensive. Tom, if someone said, "Hey, good morning, Ben," my brain took it as an assault. Oh, look at Special Ben there. I was always on that train of thought that someone was judging me.
Mm-hmm.
So the family, they kind of just backed off. Now it's more, we have a better relationship. Now we're boys, my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Ben, earlier that your family was your motivation to really push. So it must feel nice to just be in a better place with all of that.
Absolutely.
And we can adjust to, I don't know if you want to quickly talk about this, Tom, but we've had a few people also express a claustrophobic type fear with using our mask. And I think you guys had a recommendation about simply putting it on prior to working out, just the mask itself or without the strap. I don't remember exactly, but Tom, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I'm glad we're circling back to this because, in Live O2 land, we're delivering an air quality to the user. And to do that, we have to use a mask. And Air Force folks usually don't have a problem with that at all. They know what a mask is and it's familiar paraphernalia. Any other individual who hasn't experienced something like a snorkel mask or, a scuba mask or respirator mask, it is a new experience. So we have to slow down and stop ourselves, especially when we feel there's a little bit of apprehension. And it's one of those cases where we have to make it as comfortable as possible and really honor the person's pace. And, some interesting things happening in the mask world, and for us, protocol wise, we like to actually plug the mask into the reservoir, put the system on oxygen, and just without a strap or anything, we let the person hold that mask to their face and realize, oh, I can breathe in from this. And the air that I'm getting is really nice. So it's associating it with something that feels really good. And we just have to build a little bit of confidence of saying, okay, I can breathe through this comfortably. And eventually they get to a point where they can work out in it. And this is the interesting thing too, is when you have a mask on, it's not a normal scenario that you're working out. So that's a whole nother level of, okay, we've got a mask on and the body is working, at somewhat moderate to intense pace, and we have to keep this mask in place. After a while, it becomes second nature and it works fine with, 95% of the individuals, but it's one place that when we have apprehension, we just want to slow down and give that person plenty of room to, just sit down and take a few breaths out of the reservoir and get some, confidence and some reference points of saying, okay, this is just a little bit of a new experience for me. And then they can move forward.
And also, I don't know that this, might work for other people. And Tom, I don't know if you have any experience with it, but in my mind too, if you're a claustrophobic type person, it might also benefit you to consider where your system is in your house. Because I know a lot of people, maybe have them in the basement or garage or something like that. You might want to try hooking it up outside. I know that Tom and Mark have done some demos out in California, outside with a nice view. So that could also maybe alleviate some type of feelings if any of our listeners have experienced that as well.
Absolutely. Put your system, if we got customers that are listening, folks that are using Live O2, put your system in a place that you enjoy working out. Go for the room with the view, and if you can be outside, go for it. One of the funnest demos we did was with Joe Mercola down in Colorado Springs. We're at 6,000 feet elevation. Dr. Mercola showed up. He said, I want to train outside because I want the UV on me, and I want as little amount of clothes on as possible, and I want to have a great workout, and I got 20 minutes. And we said, okay, let's do it. That's awesome. Play around with all those things. It's your oyster. You know, you get to figure out how this works best for you, but finding that right environment where it's in front of you and it's in an environment you want to be, you're going to use it more.
Mm-hmm. So Ben, thanks for bringing that that piece into the conversation. But I want to be respectful of your time. So to wrap up, I guess, Ben, you are an example of someone who has come a long way. You've made a lot of gains. You've been stubborn to make even more gains. So I think that's very inspiring. I would like to hear what advice you would have for all of our listeners. So keep in mind, you know, that's people who I believe some members of our group are even in their 20s. Maybe they're in good health, all the way up to people who, you know, like Julia, who are 65 and up. And then, you know,
Right.
people like yourself who are ex-military. We have people who listen to this who have PTSD, who also have limited mobility, like you. What would your prescription for health be to these people?
Believe in yourself. Listen to yourself. You know, if you think you can do it, try it. You never know. Every day, I'm still battling my own demons. Whether it be stairs, curbs, walking up and down. The fear of falling is always there, but I'll never know if I can do it unless I try. So every day I get out and face those demons and walk stairs. Just push myself, and I'd encourage everyone to do the same. Like Julia said in hers, the body wants to do it. You just have to help it get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that'd be my advice. I mean, listen to yourself. You're going to hear a lot of negatives out there from whether it be your buddies, your peers, your medical people, whatnot. And I don't want to discredit any medical because that's, they went to school. There's a lot to be said about what they have to say. I mean, they're professionals in their job and they make a lot of right decisions, but
Absolutely,
we are human, so what, as the old saying goes, is to err is human. So listen to yourself as well as your medical professionals and push yourself.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I really like wrapping up with that message. I've said it before, but we always record these on a weekend. So I always feel like each guest sends me into my weekend with a great message. So thanks, Ben, for that. You've really inspired me today. I didn't know much about your story, honestly. I know that other people in our company did. So thank you for sharing that with all of us today.
I know. Hey, and one last thing, if I can.
Yeah,
I have a buddy, another military buddy of mine who was diagnosed with severe PTSD. It was so severe, no one could touch him. A group of 5 or so people was a large group. Mm-hmm. So he was out of the work environment for the last 3.5 years. And I invited him over on my system, put him on my system. After 5 sessions, 5 15-minute sessions of doing the same ones that I was posting on the Live02 for the People page, mm-hmm. He is now back. The VA and his doctors cleared him to go back to school and work.
Wow.
Ben just invented the Train a Friend program. That's awesome.
Well, his wife thanked me. So, that's how I knew it was working. His wife came up to me.
Uh-huh.
That I just find that so amazing because, I haven't known anybody personally with PTSD, but I've working with Live02, I've encountered a couple of stories, but it always seems so sad to me that these people who have served our country come back injured and they're unable to re-enter normal life. Like you mentioned, just having a job. So it's quite shocking that these people aren't really able to provide for their family or assume normal life. So I think what you've touched on really is just enabling a person to feel better, and whether that's through these elements of oxygen getting back into their brain and making their brain function normally again. I don't really know the science piece behind that. Tom, maybe you can jump in here and save me from saying something
Well,
wrong, but I just find that it's really such a cool thing to be able to do for people who have served us.
yeah, the one piece I have to say about that, Ben, you're an awesome example of commanding your physiology. And there's I can think of others, right? There's some professional athletes. There's a bodybuilder, CT Fletcher, really interesting guy, but such a great example of commanding your physiology to do what you want it to do. And, hey, you might have to raise your voice. You might have to, get out of bed, and get into this and get real with it. But it's your physiology. If you don't command it, who else is going to do that? And
That's
it's a
correct.
it's a role we've lost. It's why we get frustrated with doctors. But, if we probably presented ourselves to doctors, walking in and saying, hey, I want to command every cell in my body, it would probably change the role of doctors tremendously in this country. And the patient would have much better results. So, that is it to me. And now there's a lot physiologically going on, but I think it's this quantum level of just saying, we talked about overachieving, and what really comes right before overachieving is, I think it's over owning. And that's where we're at a loss in a little bit of our, societal norm, is to not own it. And when we can actually move to over owning, it's easier, because you take on the commander role. Here we are with Commander Ben, and he's done it, and he's still doing it.
Yep, personal accountability. You're absolutely right.
And
If you're not accountable for yourself, who is?
Yeah, you've got to the point where I believe in myself, I know how to help myself, and now you're out there helping other people. I can't think of a better experience out there.
Well, just yesterday, Tom, my physical therapist was talking to me and wants to get on my system. She's having surgery, and she wants to get back to work sooner. And she knows, she's known me since day one of my injury.
Patient
and she knows me
becomes
now.
doctor.
So yep. So hopefully here in the next couple of weeks, I'll have her in here and get her healed up a little bit faster. That's the goal.
Yeah, let us know how that goes.
Will do.
Yes, patient to doctor is an awesome way to go. What a good flip.
Well, and that's really cool. I think, Ben, you've been, extremely kind in sharing with, obviously just sharing your story, but it seems like that carries through to you just wanting to share the experience that you've had with other people. So I think that's really cool. And from the LiveO2, from the people community, we thank you for that. But we'll go ahead and close it here for today. So for those of you listening, I will link up to everything that we've mentioned today in the show notes. And Ben, again, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's super inspiring. And I hope that, even if it just touches one member of our audience, then we've done a good thing. So thanks for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ben. We salute you.
Thanks, Tom. Yep.